Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Mars Media. For today's Beyond the Diagnosis segment, we're going to be discussing tanning beds and how they contribute to the formation of skin cancer. Over the past several decades, we've seen a rise in the incidence of skin cancer worldwide. And one of the most common causes for skin cancer is ultraviolet radiation, or UV radiation for short. Now, one of the sources of UV radiation is just from our sun. And there have been studies that support a link between total lifetime exposure to sunlight and the possibility of developing both basal and squamous cell skin cancer. However, a second and more alarming source is actually the use of indoor tanning. And this can include everything from tanning beds, tanning bunks, and also from sun lamps. And so despite the efforts of several tanning companies to convince you otherwise, scientists around the world do urge against the use of tanning beds, and they have been restricted or outright banned in several different countries. To learn more, we actually invited Dr. Chona all the way from UCLA to discuss exactly how UV radiation can lead to skin cancer.
So there are three types of UV radiation that exist. So we have UVA, UVB, and UVC. And so with tanning beds, they predominantly emit UVA and UVB. So it's worth noting, though, that exposure to UV radiation from tanning beds can be up to 10 times higher than that from the sun, making tanning beds a significant source of harm. So when UV radiation penetrates the skin, what can happen is it can induce something called DNA damage, and it can initiate the generation of tumors. And so this occurs because of the absorption of UV radiation in DNA, which leads to mutations. To counteract this damage, though, the body has DNA repair mechanisms that involve something called the tumor suppressor protein called P53. And so when activated in response to DNA damage, what happens is P53 begins to upregulate the propiomelanocortin, so POMC gene, which is actually what leads to the effect of tanning. And so it's important to note that this UV-mediated DNA damage can occur even in the absence of tanning, and tanning does not seem to occur with prior DNA damage, casting significant doubt over the possibility of a safe tan. And so UVA radiation in particular has been found to induce further DNA damage through the generation of free radicals, which also contributes to the formation of skin cancer. So in conclusion, it is crucial to protect your skin from UV radiations and avoid tanning beds to reduce your risk of skin cancer and ensure that you always use sunscreen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chona. For our segment, we wanted to go even further and investigate how society and how the various tanning companies have contributed to a lot of the misconceptions around indoor tanning and the rise of tannorexia in society. For that, we go to our field reporter, Salman, for a little bit more information.
Thank you, Melanie. And here we are with Dr. Papatia, a behavioral psychologist from Harvard. So, Dr. Papatia, the term tannorexia has become very common nowadays. In your own words, how would you explain what tannorexia is?
Great question. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this show. I'm very excited to be here. So in terms of tannorexia, it's a very common slang term, and it's used to describe a behavioral addiction to tanning. It refers to an obsession with having a dark tan, leading to excessive tanning behaviors such as frequent use of tanning beds or prolonged sun exposure. With this being said, the excessive use of tanning beds emits high levels of UV radiation, which causes damage to skin cells and increases the risk of skin cancer.
Thank you, Dr. Papatia. And now back to you, Melanie.
Thank you again for tuning into our segment, Beyond the Diagnosis. From everyone at Mars Media, we wish you a good night.